It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby. Hey.
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
And the Ohio State Buckeyes are the first national champions of the playoff era.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to football.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Sorry, we're using the new Spreaker desktop app for this show, and so that we don't have to use the stereo mix version, and you hear all that. Hopefully, you don't hear all that airy sound and all that stuff that you usually hear on the broadcast. And this sounds better, and I don't have to have it jacked up and have my microphone to where it's like all the way next to my mouth. But hey, this is Football to Football. We are here doing our NFL Week 12 recap, and of course we will be talking about the game that ended not too long ago here between the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens, and it turned out to be quite a fantastic game actually. And we will be doing, of course, talking about that college football as they ended their last actual official week of the season, then they get into the conference championships this next week. And of course our player of the week, Gary's fantasy waiver wire pickups, and that all-important top 5 power rankings that could be different today. But of course, I am not here by myself. I am the host of this podcast, Sean Garmer, and with me are my 2 co-hosts, Mr. Gary Vaughn. Gary?
If I'm Matt Schaub today, I'm hugging the guy that blocked the punt. Or the kick field goal, whatever it is. He got the, threw the interception and got saved. So I'm thanking the special teams unit. All of them get watches.
And, of course, Mr. Randy Isbell.
Do we get watches for watching the game?
We should, but, of course, we get the solitary prize of commercials.
Yeah, that's prize enough, man. Especially like doing those Ravels, you realize how annoying it is to sit there through the commercials, honestly.
It's so funny, too, because we've done this together. All 3 of us have done the Rabble, and it's a lot of fun, but you do realize those commercial breaks help the guys calling the game because they get a chance to get a break, get some thoughts into control. We have to speak the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, technically you can, but I just don't want to go find music for every single moment that we go take a break. So it's just
that's true.
A lot easier to do that, but let's go ahead. And, I mean, did you guys... Anything happen after the? I know we had our Thanksgiving podcast starter. We talked about what happened on our Thanksgivings, but anything on the weekend here? Interesting or?
Put up the Christmas tree. That's about it on my end.
I watched the girlfriend put up the Christmas tree.
Secretly, Randy, I secretly watched my wife do it too. I did the hard part. I picked up the middle piece and the top and put it together. There you go. That's my part.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
I awoke on, was it Saturday morning or Sunday morning? I think it was Sunday morning, to finding out that my daughter had slipped and fell at whatever the BJ's, which is the equivalent of Sam's Club over here in Florida. They actually do have a Sam's Club somewhere, but it's not here near me. She was running after a cart that apparently had my mom and grandma's purses in it, and she slipped and had a small hole in her head. She had to go get stitches at a hospital.
Ooh.
Poor baby. And she woke up and she's like, "Daddy, look at the boo-boo on my head." And I was like, "Oh, that's That's not just a boo-boo. I was like, that's pretty bad. I was pretty mad at the people involved for not telling me the next morning, but I don't know. After having been at work till 2 in the morning, probably not the best news for me to hear.
Yeah.
So
Oof.
maybe it was better that they didn't tell me. I don't know. But, hopefully the thing that sucks about the head ones is they have to get removed. You can't do the whole just having the disappearing stitches. So I have to take her so they can look at them and all that. But thankfully she's okay and it wasn't anything worse. But, yeah, that was the extent, other than working, the extent of highlight of my weekend, I guess. But, yeah, let's get into talking about these Cleveland Browns being at home taking on the Baltimore Ravens. And, man, Randy was telling you before, man, we're going to probably – I don't know how we're going to talk about this game. It's going to be atrocious. And actually – it wasn't. It was pretty close the whole time. Matt Schaub did his thing throwing interceptions, including a pick six, which helped the Browns not have to score a touchdown. The defense did that for them. But in the end, as it's been with these primetime games, really, we had a crazy ending with not Josh McCown, but Austin Davis, because McCown went out with a collarbone injury. No word on if he's going to have to miss games or anything, but Austin Davis got him down the field after a pick by Matt Schaub that made it to where they only had to go about like 20 yards or so. Coons had a 51-yard field goal that he could have hit, but it was blocked. And then not only that, but it was ran back for a touchdown, and we barely missed overtime, and Baltimore wound up winning the game because of that run back for a touchdown. Just amazing way to end that game. But honestly, it just felt like both teams really just kind of canceled each other out. It was even. McCown was doing his thing, getting down the field. Baltimore wasn't being stopped either, unless, Schaub did it to himself. I don't know. I don't really know that there's a total key to this game, really, because it was so close. But what did you think, Randy?
Actually, the key to this was, you're sitting there with a 3-7 Baltimore team and a 2-8 Cleveland team, and I'm sitting there going, well, if the WWE was ever going to have decent ratings, this was the week. And from what I hear, Raw was completely terrible, and this turned out to be a pretty close game. So I'm sure the ratings won't show it there. But yeah, it was a pretty good game. We talked earlier. I think it's going to be a great game, and even if it was, I didn't care. These are this is like the only matchup we've had so far where it was just two teams that are completely out of it. I like that they both tried extremely hard. Obviously, still playing to the end of the season. I wish Cleveland would remember how to run the ball. I would like to see if this Duke Johnson kid's going to be for real or not.
He certainly works when you get him into passing situations.
Right. He almost averages 4 yards a carry, but he only carries it 7 times. He just is non-existent, but he's dynamic when he gets the ball. They just don't want to use him. For some reason, they're still giving the ball to Crowell. So, just some growing pains there. I do think that Pettin wishes they did go for 2, as it was shown on the broadcast after Austin Davis throws the really great touchdown pass to Travis Benjamin, him holding up the 2 fingers like they were going to go for 2 and then changing their mind. As things kind of played out, maybe going for 2 was the right decision.
Yeah, it seems like it. To me, if your quarterback feels confident enough to hold up the 2 fingers and say, okay, we're going to win, honestly, who cares? Like, at that point, the win or the loss doesn't really matter. It's the fact that you made it that close, right? That's what the team's going to focus on. That's what the players are going to focus on. Sure, you want the W, you want that feeling, but if you go down there and you don't make it on that 2-point conversion, is it really going to matter at the end of the day? No. So I think you're right. I think, and that's the thing that Gary and I said on the Rabble. Like, I was like, I know I didn't squint and not just see 2 fingers, magically there. I know I saw Austin Davis hold up 2 fingers, and then all of a sudden didn't happen. So, Gary, did you see anything watching the game, or?
Really, the one key out of this is Austin Davis is not a bad quarterback, it looks like. Then again, he is facing a defense that is not that great. Baltimore's defense has definitely taken a lot of hits injury-wise, and of course just, talent-wise, people leaving and those kind of situations going with them. So, honestly, I still think that he, got the job done when he was thrown in the game. I'm kind of curious to see if they ever would, decide to use him more if there is a big deal with McCown, or if they would, get Manziel out of the doghouse. But besides that, no, these teams are kind of right there with each other. Randy just said it. The records are pretty similar. This game kind of showed that these teams are very similar. The one thing I take out of this game is it just seemed like Baltimore, it was fate for them to win. Everything they had to fall their way to get them to victory happened. Really, it looked like the Cleveland Browns were fighting uphill all game long. I don't know why it felt like that. Like I said, this team was very similar to the other. But that's just the feel I got out of it. And, of course, the ending just proves my point of how it just seemed like everything was going to happen Baltimore's way no matter what.
I do have to say real quick that it was right around the time you guys started Rabbles, before I had switched over to you guys. But when Josh McCown goes down, John Gruden goes on this stupid rant about how they need to throw Manziel in there and just turn away their punishment because all of a sudden they have a chance to win this game. And I'm sorry, I totally disagree with it. They gave him a punishment for a reason. He breaks their trust. So they're going, listen, you're not playing, period, and until we can gain your trust. And now all of a sudden, because you could possibly win a game that means absolutely nothing, you're going to show this kid that, oh, well, we're just going to punish you unless we really need you. And then you go out there and you save the day and you become the hero, and none of this really matters. To me, is like that just drove me absolutely nuts. Yes, I understand we're not in college anymore, and, these guys need to be treated like adults, but Johnny Manziel did a very childish thing, so he was being treated like a child. You can't just take that back. To me, that just drove me absolutely nuts, just how adamant he was that they needed to put Johnny Manziel out there because they had to win this game. Luckily, Austin Davis looks great and, gets it back there and ties that game up, but going 3-8 was not going to change anything for Cleveland this year.
Yeah.
Keeping that punishment is what they needed to do, and luckily Pettin was strong-willed enough to go, no, you're sitting.
Really, I do agree with you. And, Sean and I were talking about this on the Rabble, and he kind of asked me the same question. Would I think that Manziel need to be back in there? And here's my thought process on it. I think the punishment is definitely deserved because they, specifically told him, you've got to grow up. You cannot be doing these things. We don't want to see this happen again. He's been warned. So, yes, I think the bench is where he belongs. But on the other side, I think it's a little bit harsh to say till the rest of the season. If you want to take him out 3 games, 2 games, whatever you want to do, but I think you need to allow him to at least get an opportunity, especially if this season matters to no one in Cleveland. It's finishing the season. Then I think that's the time at the end of the season you do get him in there and you get him more reps, you get him more involved just to see what he can do, because it's the difference between, is this kid worth your time, or is he going to be a guy that can actually do something for you and you want him to have those reps. So that's the way I look at it. I do agree, though, he needs to be on the bench a time, but I don't know if the entire rest of the season is the way I would go about it.
That's the thing that I was wondering too, and that's the thing is, the Browns don't owe Manziel anything. We have to remember that Manziel did this to himself. Nobody told Manziel to go out there, party in Texas, and do things that he knew he shouldn't be doing, and then go lie about it. Which, this is the worst thing about all of it. He lied. It's not like there was misconstrued evidence, or somebody deleted their phone or whatever, like Tom Brady, and we can harp on about that all day. This was clear cut. He went out there, did something, told the team something else, and he was caught. And it's disappointing, and it's hard to be able to say, okay, we're going to forgive that because you've already forgiven other things. You went through this whole rehab so you could be clean. And then, technically you're not doing anything illegal, but if you went to a rehab because it was that bad, that means you don't need to be drinking. And, that's an issue. They don't want this to become a circus around you. They want this to be about the team, not about Johnny Manziel, and even then, he still hasn't shown any. I mean, he's shown some flashes of Johnny Manziel, the guy we saw at Texas A&M, but we still haven't seen things from Johnny Manziel that go, okay, this guy needs to be playing in the NFL right now. I mean, I still don't think Teddy Bridgewater is that great, but at least he's shown much more than what we've seen Manziel do. And this is my question is. Let's say you do what you do. Let's say Josh McCown's out for a little bit with this collarbone thing. Do you just forget about Manziel at all, try out, see what you got with Austin Davis, and then you just draft somebody and you say goodbye to Johnny Manziel?
I give Austin Davis the next start, and then if he's really good, then yeah, you don't need Manziel anymore. You now have your quarterback. If he struggles, then you see if Manziel's any better, and if neither of them are good, you get rid of both and start over again.
Yeah, I can see where Randy's coming from. And me and you, Sean, talked about the rest of the schedule for Cleveland. It's a difficult schedule. There's lots of good defenses, good teams in overall that they're going to be facing. Yep. So if Austin
Seattle,
Davis...
San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and I can't remember the other team right now, but...
Yeah, saying all that, I mean, if Austin Davis plays Seattle and plays them well and doesn't make a lot of mistakes and he looks like he's poised, plays some other teams,
I think history with Seattle because he played for the Rams.
Yeah, true. So I mean, I can see where Randy's coming from. You get rid of the headache by getting rid of Manziel, and sure, if you want to keep Austin Davis or if you want to go draft a new guy, that's fine and dandy, but. I just think that Cleveland does not want to get into a situation where they cut ties with this kid and don't deal with him and find out he goes to another team and flourishes. And they're thinking, man, if we just would have held our breath and took our lumps and just did it, we could have had this kid. I think that's what they're trying to not do.
I understand that point, too. I totally understand that. And, it makes sense right now. But how many teams does this player just does not work out on, and then he goes to another team and different philosophy, different morals, standards, and whatever, and coaches and all that, and he either straightens out or they just let him kind of be himself and he plays better. It's just sometimes you got to cut somebody loose so that they have the freedom to decide what they want to do, and that's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault because he was never going to be that player for you that he is for this other team for various reasons, So that's it, I think, on the Cleveland side. Look, on the Baltimore side, this season's over for them too. Most of their guys, they're pretty much set. I don't think you're going to have you're not going to have Matt Schaub replacing, Joe Flacco or anything. I think Matt Schaub can play himself into a clear backup role, certainly, if he plays well in the rest of these games, where he could have a job for next season. But what are some of the players that you think may have stood out to you that Navy fans or the team should be looking at and saying, okay, we want to make sure we have them here for next year? Like Kamar Aiken, to me, has stood out ever since Steve Smith has been out. He's really come on. He's been that lead receiver that you need him to be. All the tight ends have sort of flourished after Dennis Pitta went down. Allen seems to be okay, but anybody in particular for you?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head with Aiken. I think Aiken's the main guy. Crockett Gilmore, too, is going to be a key down the line. Allen's looked okay. There's some shining spots on defense. Obviously, I mean, he's not a name that you don't know, but Elvis Dumerville is definitely showing to be a leader for the team and could really get that unit together over the next couple of years. But there's some shining spots for Baltimore.
Yeah, and, I think a guy that's had to step up a little bit here, Chris Givens, he's kind of had to shine when he, has the opportunity. I like him. I've seen enough of him where I could say, he's going to be a good receiver, even if Steve Smith gets back. All three of those guys are talented, when Steve Smith gets back in the rotation next year. So I don't look for them to have many problems when it comes to the receiving core if Givens returns and is good.
All right, we talked a lot about this game, and we now need to go on and talk about some of the bigger and more important games that happened in this NFL Week 12. And even though this division is bad, the New York Giants and Washington Redskins essentially had a game to decide who would be first in the NFC East. And the New York Giants came out there like they didn't want it. I mean, I don't think I've seen a team come out more flat for the 3.5 quarters like the New York Giants did in this game. The Redskins were all on top of making sure they were there for the tip balls and intercepting Eli Manning 3 different times, including one in the end zone. This is going to be talked about, although Beckham, of course, with that wonderful touchdown catch, bringing it in with one hand and then bringing it into his second hand to make sure he caught it going down. That's tremendous. They got him that second touchdown. Tom Coughlin can talk about all he wants. If we had more time, we would have won the game. You know what? You only play 4 quarters, Tom Coughlin. What, you going to sit there and say we're going to play an extra quarter just so that? No, you know what you do? You show up in the first half. You show up. Your defense was pitiful. They couldn't rush at all at Kirk Cousins. Your running game is atrocious. They still can't run the ball. They give credit to Washington's defense. They were sacking Eli Manning. They were doing the things they needed to do. Alfred Morris woke up in this game. He had himself a nice game. Deshaun Jackson once again scores a long touchdown. I think that's all they really needed. It seems like Kirk Cousins has figured out that if you give it to your playmakers, they can make plays for you. I mean, Matt Jones, again, long screen. He makes things happen. Deshaun Jackson with the long pass, get it to Garcon and Jordan Reed when you need first downs. He's doing the things you need to do, I think. And for the Redskins, does this mean, we talked about it in the preview, but does this mean now Washington Redskins are winning the NFC East? Gary, what do you think?
Oh, go ahead, Gary.
For me, I mean, right now they definitely are the front runners. And, in that preview we did, I did pick the Giants to win this game because I really felt like, the Giants were going to be motivated. They were going to be ready to come and play because, let's be honest, they can make things happen on offense when they're all in sync and they're, hitting at the top gear. I don't know what happened here. But they proved one thing to me, that Washington Redskins defense was as good as I expected it to be. I've been basically, sleeping on them a little bit here and there, but man, they have woken me up. And I really, enjoy watching that Washington Redskins defense, and they are very underrated if you ask me personally. So overall, I do think that the Washington Redskins are in the driver's seat here. I think the Giants can still come back. Don't get me wrong, they still can come back, but they have some difficult matchups coming up themselves. I look at the rest of Washington's schedule and say, man, they do have a big opportunity to take this home.
Yeah, they have the Cowboys twice. They have the Bears, the Bills, and the Eagles. I mean, the Bills is the only team that I'm really scared of there. If you're Washington, everybody else, I mean, the Eagles, they're terrible. The Cowboys, they're going to be bad with Matt Castle again, I'm sure. And, the Bears are trying to keep in a playoff position, but, that one's going to be one of those tough tests that you get through. But if you look at the Giants, with their schedule, they've got it tougher. They got Minnesota still, and they got Carolina still. I mean, that's a rough one to go through and say, we're going to win. They got the Jets, who they're trying to keep in the playoff hunt as well. So, I mean, that's rough for the Giants. And looking at the Giants case, Randy, does this game pretty much sum up the Giants for you in one game? Like, all the negatives and issues that they have?
Yeah, especially the negative parts, it definitely hits. The Giants are just such a weird team, and they've been the entire time Eli Manning's been the quarterback. It's just they will look so terrible like this, and then all of a sudden, like the moment you count them out, then they just never lose a game again. It's like Eli remembers that he's a decent quarterback and starts throwing the ball all over the place. But I don't know what brings on these stinkers, but they just happen. And yes, their schedule is extremely tough. But I will say, you know, the one thing that worries me about Washington is they can't do anything on the road. They've yet to win a game on the road. They look terrible when they're not at home. You know, you're bringing up their schedules. I mean, they have the Bears on the road, and then those last 2 games against the Eagles and Cowboys, who you would think they're better than, but you got to show me on the road that you can win some of these games. So this division is still wide open, as sad as it is. It's sad to think that this division is now worse than the AFC South, but it is. And hell, even Dallas is still kind of in it, which is just terrible to say.
Yeah, I talked about this. I said, well, it's possible that Dallas could still be in it if Washington wins, and certainly they do. And now they have a Monday night matchup against each other. It's at home for the Redskins, though, so that's where they've been tremendous this year. That's going to be a rough ass. But again, this is a divisional matchup. It doesn't matter who's playing a quarterback for the Cowboys. You should feel like you should be able to compete in this kind of game. And that is the truth is those are the games that they've competed in the most. Is the games against the Eagles, the game against the Giants. That's where Matt Castle probably looked at his best, honestly. So who knows? Who knows? We could be talking about, once again, the team that's in the lead in that division cannot get a consecutive win after in the next game, and that's been the issue with that division too. So let's see what happens going into next week, and we'll talk about that more on Friday. But Randy, your Jets, they pretty much took care of the Dolphins. Ryan Tannehill has to be the most garbage time quarterback I've ever seen, right? Like, this dude just scores touchdowns when it doesn't matter, like nobody's business.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, this game completely got away for Tannehill and the Dolphins, and the Jets kind of sit back a little bit. You know, they're really banged up in the secondary, and that's where Tannehill goes nuts. He connects with Jarvis Landry a ton, especially late in the fourth quarter. Landry gets, 13 catches for 165 yards and a touchdown, which looks great on fantasy numbers, but it meant nothing as far as the game goes. The Jets have definitely turned in a petition just to say they want to play the Dolphins every week because this is when they look the best. I mean, they completely outclassed Miami. Like, Miami is supposed to be this great team, but for whatever reason, the Jets just line up against them so well. But you look at the Miami side first, and listen, the Jets set a defensive record in this game by allowing just 12 rushing yards. And at first you're like, holy cow, the Jets completely dominated the rushing game. Well, Miami only rushed the ball 9 times. And it wasn't like this game was 28-0 right off the bat. It was 14-0 at halftime. It was still pretty close score-wise. They just completely went away from the run. I mean, Lamar Miller got 5 carries in this game. You had 9 running plays to 58 passing plays. It was just ridiculous. It made it really easy for the Jets defense just to kind of to bring in a lot of pressure on Tannehill and drop their secondary back and just bring the heat on wide receivers and make sure they drop any pass that gets near them. And I mean, it gets so bad that the offensive coordinator gets fired. So that's back-to-back Dolphins-Jets games where the Jets beat the Dolphins so bad that they fire somebody. So, Gary, I got to ask you, will the change at offensive coordinator work as well for Miami as it did for Detroit? Because, I mean, it can't get any worse than what it was on Sunday.
It might work to a little of an extent, but for me personally, I'm not sold that just because you change your offensive coordinator, things are going to be solid. You're going to start having a lot of success. I think Detroit is a great situation for them, and Billy Matthew Stafford loves his new offensive coordinator, so it's really working out well for them. But the question is Tannehill going to be able to sink in just like Stafford did with his offensive coordinator? I don't know that. Can it get any better? I think it sure can. I'm just not sold it's going to be as great as Detroit.
On the Jets side, we've learned the magic of Ryan Fitzmagic, and that is when he trims his beard, he goes ridiculous. The story is that the last time he trimmed it, he threw 6 touchdowns. For his 33rd birthday, he decided to trim it again, and this time he throws 4. So not too shabby. Many Jets players have said that they will pitch in to give him weekly beard trimmings, just to see if it works. So there's where the magic lies. Chris Ivory looks okay. He's still a little banged up to me. He does break off a really ridiculous 31-yard touchdown run where over half of the Dolphins players had a chance to tackle him at the line of scrimmage before he breaks out for it. I mean, he goes 21 for 87 yards and that one touchdown, but there was too many times where they would have a 3rd and 1 situation that he could not convert. There was a situation where they're at the goal line and both the first and second downs, they go to Chris Ivory and he can't do it. But Brandon Marshall takes advantage. He gets 9 catches for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. He completely dominates Brent Grimes, who's like 8 inches shorter than him, and they completely just exploit that matchup. So Sean, I mean, the Jets, like you said, are still in the playoff hunt. Tiebreakers are keeping them out of one of those 2 wild card spots right now. But who is the most important player to the Jets if they want to make that run towards the playoffs?
I think to me it's still Chris Ivory. I think, obviously you need to have your quarterback to do things, but I think Chris Ivory is that guy. When he scores touchdowns, when he rushes and is important, when he's vital in the game, I think that makes a total difference because when you can run the ball, you can do play action with Fitzpatrick. He can throw down the field to Brandon Marshall. He can throw those, intermediate routes to Eric Decker, and it puts the pressure off of him so he can do his thing. Yes, he's already hard to bring down for a sack and all that because he kind of moves around, but I still think Chris Ivory is the main reason that team functions the way it does. So moving along here, we do have the New Orleans Saints going into Houston and getting spanked. They don't even score a touchdown, which is the first time Drew Brees has not done that since 2012 against Atlanta. And I think it's even further back for the Saints as a whole not to score a touchdown. Drew Brees was intercepted at the goal line, so that maybe they could have had one. Marcus Colston was a bigger deal in this game for the Saints than he has been for a lot of the year. But honestly, it's pretty much like Mark Ingram, and he's like the only shining light this team has at this point, other than maybe Ben Watson. Just this Houston defense is something else. They were able to just, J.J. Watt got to him about 7 different times, and he would have sacked him 3 times, but Breeze threw one into the dirt for intentional grounding instead of getting sacked, which probably would have been better if he just got sacked. Less yardage he would have lost on that. But they just couldn't get a whole lot going, honestly. They got into a lot of 3rd and longs against the defense and just too much going on. Brian Hoyer was like 7 for 7 on his first drive, and he did throw the interception, but it was early. Alfred Blue was, he got about almost 80 yards in here. He was effective running. They were able to just kind of mix it up. They even got Cecil Shorts in there running as well. He actually scored a touchdown. Actually one of the guys that wasn't, that crazy effective in this game was DeAndre Hopkins. He only got 36 yards. So, if you were starting him in fantasy hoping he'd get a ton, he didn't. It was more about Ryan Griffin, and he was kind of spreading around a lot more in this game. But honestly, it was a mixture of the Houston offense kind of being on point because this New Orleans Saints defense is terrible. And I honestly don't know that firing Rob Ryan made a difference here. I didn't see anything really different that Dallas Allen was doing that was making this team any better. And I think this is one of those times where you can't put it totally on the defense. The offense was just completely ineffective. And I think this is where I have to ask the question to you, Randy, like, when are we going to start blaming Sean Payton for these woes for the Saints? And when are we going to start saying that maybe this New Orleans is just an all-around bad team and not just their bad defense?
Well, I think the writing's been on the wall for a while. I definitely, going into this season, thought it was going to be a struggle for them. So I think come the off season, I just don't see Sean Payton staying. I think the Saints and him part ways. It's falling apart. It's time to move on for both of them. It's the weird thing about the NFL. There's very few coaches that can just stay in one place for so long because the messages get stale, and I think that's what's going on with New Orleans. It's just stale.
Well, Gary, I know you're a Brian Hoyer fan, but it's kind of maybe unfair for me to ask you this question, but do you think Brian Hoyer now, even with TJ Yates doing his thing, he's proven that, let's say for some reason they don't make the playoffs, even though technically they're the wild card right now, and they could still be competing for that division, considering we still don't know how long Matt Hasselbeck's going to have to be back there throwing for the Golds. Let's say they don't make the playoffs, or they do, and they're out in the first round or something like that. Do you still think that going into next year, Hoyer's the guy for Houston, or do they look at somebody else maybe? Or
I think if Houston gets an opportunity to get somebody that they feel like will be an elite quarterback, or they maybe get in the draft and say, hey, we like this kid, he fits our system, I think that you do want to go outside. Hoyer really, to me, is a patchwork quarterback. They've seen that he has, experience. They like what they saw in Cleveland. But outside of that, I don't think that they were completely sold, that they were ready, to just put all their chips in on him. I think, once again, he's just kind of there to kind of be a veteran. So, yeah, I do think that unless he gets far into the playoffs and unless he has a lot more success, that they're just bought and sold on keeping him at the starting quarterback position. We never know how the offseason is going to go. If nothing shows up, I'm sure he will be the starting quarterback next year. But trust me, if they find somebody they really feel like is going to be a solid option, I could definitely see Hoyer being a backup.
all right, well, let's move on from this game and go into a game that certainly meant a lot for both teams. Probably one of the better games of the entire week. The Kansas City Chiefs taking on those Buffalo Bills. And Randy, the Chiefs still winning games and now on a 5-game win streak. What did you see here?
I saw a Chiefs team that I have been waiting for all season long. This is why I thought they were going to make it to the Super Bowl. This is why I was so high on them. Alex Smith has not thrown an interception in 283 attempts. It's all about not making mistakes. It's about being consistent. It's about giving it to the running back, which is why I was a little worried, obviously, when Jamal Charles goes down. But it doesn't matter. Shakandrick West was doing really well. Spencer Ware, does awesome as a replacement. 19 carries for 114 yards and a touchdown. Jeremy Maclin is now starting to get used to the offense, and him and Alex are really connecting a lot better. He gets 9 catches for 160 yards and a touchdown. He's doing a great job of spreading out that field, is what Kansas City needs. So, Sean, I got to ask you, I didn't think it was going to be this crazy. Did you ever think Kansas City would have a high-powered offense this season?
I don't think I certainly thought at any point they would. They certainly had the players for it, but just, they're with Alex Smith, normally they're this kind of this boring team that just wins games and relies on their defense or whatever, but it's been crazy to see, like, Jeremy Maclin kind of come out of it and get all this, and Travis Kelce too, and it doesn't matter who they put at running back, he goes off. This is nuts. And it's against a really good Bills defense too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and of course, their schedule is pretty weak. So, a wild card is definitely in the pictures for Kansas City. On the other side, listen, Buffalo jumped out, and it looked like they were going to take complete control of this game. They jump out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter. Hell, Tyrod Taylor has 151 passing yards in that first quarter alone. Sammy Watkins looked like it didn't matter who you put on him. He was going to catch the ball. He gets 6 catches for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. It didn't matter if he had one guy, two guys. If Tyrod threw it up in his vicinity, he was usually coming down with it, which is my question, Gary. I mean, it's a weird one to ask. I mean, he does get targeted 10 times in this game, but just with how hot he was and how dominant he was it a mistake not to just force a few extra attempts to him as the game was going on?
I think so. I think you should definitely try to get him the ball as much as possible, especially if he is as hot as you were talking about. Because watching that and watching those catches he was making, it was just a wow. This guy is just on fire today. And when you got a hot hand, you got to go with it. I always complain about this when I'm watching games. Let's just take, for example, DeMarco Murray. When he gets hot in a game and he's running well, they get away from him, and then they start getting, interceptions. Other things start happening to cause them to lose the game. Why would you go away from the guy that's getting yardage? Why would you go away from a Doug Martin who's getting chunks of yards, or anybody else? So yeah, I mean, I look at this situation and say, yeah, you got to get the ball at Sammy Watkins. If he is getting the job done, he's taking care of the ball. He's not having any issues. Yeah, it kind of boggles my mind at times, but yeah, they definitely should have.
Well, we move on from that game that saw the Chiefs. Now they also own the other wild card in the AFC right now, due to other results that we'll talk about later. But it's Houston and Kansas City right now in the wild cards for the AFC. I don't think that would have been two we think about right now when we were first talking about teams that were going to be heading to playoffs before the season started. But now let's move on to a result that I think we all knew what was going to happen before it even kicked off. And then we get what it is, right? The Bengals win 31-7. We have 3 touchdowns by Andy Dalton, 2 of them to A.J. Green, one of them with A.J. Green wide open. Nick Foles continues to do what Nick Foles has done all year, which is throw interceptions. He threw one for a pick 6. I mean, just absolute beat down by the Bengals. I don't know if there's a whole lot to say. They got off the schneid and back into the winning ways against a team that's been terrible. And I feel bad for Jeff Fisher. I don't know that Case Keenum would have been any better, but Nick Foles is just terrible. Absolutely horrible, and he needs to go. I hope that he's not on this team next year. He is ridiculous. That trade has to be one of the worst trades in history at this point. Both those quarterbacks were terrible. Tavon Austin, the leading rusher for this team, because he got a 60-yard run play off a wildcat that they gave it to Todd Gurley, and he gave it to Tavon Austin instead. That was pretty much like the extent of their offense, really. Todd Gurley, 19 yards. Yeah, this team isn't going anywhere when Todd Gurley gets 19 yards. That's it. Just Cincinnati knew what they had to do to shut him down, and they got to him. Jeremy Hill got 86 yards in the game, which is the most he's gotten all year. Tyler Eifert got another touchdown, but he left with an injury, so, have to look and see if that's going to keep him out at all. And, but he keeps scoring touchdowns for for that tight end lead or whatever. Just, to me, I don't know what you can honestly say here about St. Louis. They were questioning their effort after the game. Jeff Fisher had to go on a cursing tirade to get people off his back. And I honestly think that is Jeff Fisher on the hot seat here? Do you see him? I honestly think that I don't care whether the guy's from Los Angeles or not. There's nothing that says you need to have Jeff Fisher as the coach of that team if they wind up being the team that goes to Los Angeles. Right? Like, is it time for something new for the Rams?
I don't think you can blame Jeff Fisher because I think it was a trade that completely squished him. Nick Foles has been just ridiculously bad, like you were saying. So I don't think they put this on Jeff Fisher this year.
Jeff Fisher to me is a solid coach. He's had his ups and downs, but he's been around the league. He knows how to put together.
But my question
teams.
is, Gary, since Steve McNair went down, has he really ever had a great offense?
Honestly, not really. Nothing thrilling. But you got to look at the talent that he had been given, some of the guys that they had to work with. I don't know. It's hard to judge a coach just based on some of that. I really feel like of course he's more of a defensive guy anyway. So I mean he's depending on the offensive coordinators to help him along with that. But I just think he's too good of a coach just to say, well, you didn't make it. If we want to go to L.A., you don't need to be the face of the franchises or a coach going to L.A. No, he's a great guy. If he doesn't work out next year, well, then let him go. But I just think he's too smart of a coach to just cut ties with.
Well, speaking of defense, they didn't get Danny Dalton once in this game, so defense not doing well here against certainly one of the better teams in the league. So Cincinnati, going in here, they get back on the winning ways. Just business as usual for them. I really don't know that there's a whole lot to evaluate here for them, honestly. So we can just move it along to the next game, which would be, Randy, you looking at the Oakland Raiders and Tennessee Titans. And, man, this one was quite weird. And I think Tennessee has a gripe with that call on the fourth down. I honestly didn't see where that holding call was coming from, but did you see it?
No, and to be honest, I get to it in another game, but holy crap! We complain about officiating a lot, and I know it gets old, but it was really, really bad this week. It hits an all-time low in a game we're going to get to later on. But yeah, I can see it. I mean, but I guess you can't get too mad. You're 2-9, so who cares? I actually went into this game just wanting to see some of these young stars go at it, because I think this is what's going to be battling it out in the AFC in the next 4 or 5 years, and I definitely was not disappointed in what I saw. Derek Carr wins the battle over Mariota because he doesn't make the mistakes. Mariota throws 2 interceptions. One was, I believe it was Walker falls down, so it just looks like a really terrible pass right to a defender, but just one of those things. Seth Roberts comes out of nowhere for Oakland. 6 catches for 113 yards, gets 2 touchdowns, including the big game winner late.
You sure it wasn't Seth Rollins?
Oh, gee. I told you I was watching the game, and I think it was Greg Gumbel was the guy on the call. And it's like, I'm at work when I got to watch this game, and it was just Seth Rollins with another catch. I went, Seth who? What am I watching anymore? And then it would, Seth Roberts would be the other guy would say, oh, okay. Like, this would be really cool if there was a Seth Rollins in the NFL, and now we get to kind of connect your guys' 2 podcasts together. But
I know.
That's what happened. He didn't tear that ACL. He's out there playing wide receiver for the Raiders.
Exactly.
But, I mean, Latavius Murray is still struggling for Oakland, but they haven't really missed him. They've definitely just kind of gotten into the air a little bit more. Not the best weather, but we're still flinging it around. So, Sean, listen, Oakland is full of this young talent. I mean, this is kind of what happens when you're as bad as they are for so long. At some point, you're finally going to figure out how to use the draft right. How many years would you put it at for Oakland to win the AFC West?
Man, I don't know, because if Brock Osweiler winds up the quarterback for the Broncos, they could be in for another few years of not winning. If they can keep that talent around him, certainly. And the Chiefs, they're not getting any worse, honestly. Uh, I'd say maybe 2 years. I think next year they'll be really close, but just won't end up getting it. I think I'll give them 2 years. Maybe another draft to get it right still.
Yeah. On the Tennessee side, still no semblance of a running game. A combined 18 carries for 44 yards. Just Antonio Andrews is not getting the job done. David Cobb is not up to speed. So that definitely does not help Mariota at all. The defense ends up giving up over 400 yards. So there's a lot still to fix in Tennessee. And the way it's sitting right now, I mean, we still got 5 weeks to go, but they would be getting the number 1 draft pick. So, Gary, what is the most important thing to fix for Tennessee in the offseason? Is it the running game or is it the defense?
You know, a lot of people would answer this differently because there are people that lean on the offense and say the offense will help the defense, will keep them off the field, things like that. But for me personally, I mean, as bad as these running backs have looked at times or just incompetent during games, I got to look at the defense. I just feel like this defense is inept and they really, really need some help. I feel like that's the important key here. If that defense can get right, they can figure some things out, add some key players. I really feel like we're looking at a different Tennessee team, a team that can, hide the running game a little bit, depend on Mariota, and of course maybe use some of the receivers to help, run the ball at times, kind of like a Tavon Austin, things like that. So, I mean, I really feel like defense is the key to get this Tennessee team back on the track.
Well, moving on from this game, we have another game that meant a lot as far as NFC standings, and especially one in the wild card and for divisional purposes as well, at least in Minnesota's way, because, Atlanta's not winning that division with Carolina doing their thing. But Minnesota came in there, and they did what they do, which is play defense and run Adrian Peterson, and they ran him a ton in this game. 158 yards, Peterson 2 touchdowns. I mean, just amazing how he keeps doing it here for the Vikings. They could stop him, but then he'd bust them and go through for a first down, get a couple of first downs in a row. Bridgewater, again, doesn't look great, but he's efficient. And that's the point with this Vikings offense is if you're not really getting to Bridgewater and you're letting Peterson run all over you, then you're getting what you're getting. But if you're, kind of like what we saw in the Packers game is they stop Peterson, but then the defense is not that great against the pass. So when Bridgewater was actually out there having to pass the ball and he wasn't getting rushed, he was passing where he wanted. Well, the issue was too is they're at home and Atlanta offensively is just having a field day of errors. Tavon Coleman rips off a 50-yard run and then fumbles in the middle of that 50-yard run. Matt Ryan throws 2 interceptions. I don't understand what's going on with Matt Ryan. I'm like, I know Julio Jones was held in check, only 56 yards, and, he wasn't too much of a factor in this game. I think you give Xavier Rhodes a lot of credit for that, kind of covering for him there. But again, Matt Ryan just making some bad throws, getting rushed, and just throwing passes he shouldn't throw, and the guys were just you have kind of slow receivers in Jacob Tamme, Roddy White that can get you first downs, but when you need them to get you those yards after the catch, they really can't do it. I think a lot of credit should go to the Vikings defense for kind of putting a stop to things. It just, to me, they only got to Ryan twice, but he's just not playing well at all. He's been a part of why this Falcons team is in the state that they're in, with losing the last 5 out of 6 right now. They're 6-5, and honestly, to me, I'm asking you this question too, Randy, but to me, I think they sealed their fate in this game. I think it's over for them. They're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. They allowed Seattle to catch them, and Seattle's playing really well right now. they're just trending in the wrong direction completely, and it doesn't look like there's any stop to it. And now they're going on the road the next 3 games against 3 up-and-coming teams, one of them more than up-and-coming in Carolina. So, yeah, I mean, this was my NFC South division winner in the preseason. I really liked them early, and they started out red hot, and I don't know why, but the wheels have just completely fallen off of this team. I don't know if it was just all smoke and mirrors at the beginning of the year, and we all just kind of bought into it, and the NFL teams have just figured them out. But yeah, they are not the same team that I thought they were.
And Gary, on the other side of things, again, I mentioned 158 yards. Peterson added another 30 yards receiving as well. Is Adrian Peterson still the best running back in the NFL?
You know what? To me, it's really tough to gauge because there's other guys that have really done well this year, and Adrian Peterson is trucking along. But, he has been stifled at times. He's been a guy that I think if he was younger, he probably would have done a little bit better in some of these other games. But you know what? If you're asking me the best, I mean, I don't know. I think he's at least in the top 5. But I'm not. I don't know if I can give him the best. Right now. I mean, then again, who is the best? That's the best question here because I can think of a few running backs out there. Gurley, but Gurley didn't have a great game this week. There are several other guys. This year, at least in the running back spot, I just can't gauge the best of them all. I mean, if you want to put stats out there, you can go by stats. But besides that, I don't know.
What do you think, Randy?
As far as who's the best running back this year?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Peterson. He's the most. It's almost just by attrition, because all the other great running backs out there are hurt. So he's been out there every game. He's putting up numbers every game. Todd Gurley would have been in that picture, but unfortunately, the rest of his team is just so bad that people have been able to zone in on him. So yeah, I definitely think he is the best running back this year.
Yeah, and Devontae Freeman has fallen off the wagon completely. I mean, earlier this year we were all like, "Oh, wow, this kid."
Too.
Yeah, he's been hurt, and it's just been amazing to see that this whole thing is kind of turning the way it is. But for me, you go by stats, you go by whatever. But for me, talent-wise, I mean, it just seems like Todd Gurley's sneaking up to that number 1 spot quickly, even though his team's not there.
That's what the issue is for the Falcons, that they've lost Devontae Freeman, and so. That's an issue because Tevin Coleman still got 110 yards. I mean, yeah, he had the fumble on that big run that could have been a touchdown, honestly. But, and that's been an issue for him, too. That's why initially he lost his spot to Freeman was he got hurt and he was fumbling a bunch. But you think that's a big key as to why they're going through this, or it's just a mixture of things?
For me, it's a mixture. It's part of it. I feel like that, Freeman definitely was a big spark. He helped them get through games. It kind of hid some of the things that they had problems with, but I still think that there's more than just the running game.
Yeah, I think this downward spiral started happening before the injury to Freeman, so I think that just helped snowball it really quick.
All right. Well, let's move on to the San Diego Chargers against the Jacksonville Jaguars here, Randy, and I don't know what to say, honestly, about the Jacksonville Jaguars anymore. They just seem to constantly like to have these games where they play them close and they either win them at the end or they don't want to win them at the end.
They just do not want to be a really good team. It looks like it could be a really good team. They just can't put things together. This is a game of complete missed opportunities for Jacksonville. They start the game with 3 field goals, no touchdowns in the first half. I mean, if you just watch the plays and never looked at the score and just watched the first half and went, okay, who played better? 9 out of 10 people would say Jacksonville. But at the end of the half, they were down 21-9 because they just could not find the end zone. Blake Bortles throws a touchdown pass to Allen Robinson, but it gets called back because he crosses the line of scrimmage. Not only did he cross the line of scrimmage, he was 3 yards past the line of scrimmage before he decided to throw the ball. So a complete bonehead move there. He then later does the exact same thing on an incomplete pass where he crosses the line of scrimmage and then runs 3 yards farther before just kind of flipping it out to Julius Thomas and gets called there too. I just don't understand some of the decision making. But this team looks like it could be good. TJ Yeldon doesn't have a great game, but he's showing talent. Denard Robinson's starting to get into the offense a little bit better. The two Allens both played really well, but Hearns does leave with a really scary injury and had to get carted off. That stopped play for a while. Julius Thomas, I think, was the big key to this game. He is really starting to find his role now in this offense. He has 9 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown, a lot of that coming in crucial moments in the second half. And Blake Bortles finds 11 different receivers in this game. 11 different receivers catch the ball for Jacksonville. So on offense, they have all these different weapons. The defense plays decently enough, against a good offense in San Diego. But I'm pretty sure I know the answer here, Sean, but because it is the AFC South and it's been so bad, does this loss just dash the chances for Jacksonville in that division?
Yeah, that's exactly what my thought process was. I think I said it when I was running down the games on one of the halftimes for one of the games I did on Ravel. Just, this was the game. You're playing a team that has been bad, that can't get it done in close situations, and you pretty much have a futility battle against them. You let Phillip Rivers go around and throw 4 touchdowns. Just, this defense, I've said it all year, is really doing them in, along with Blake Bortles making stupid decisions at times, and I just don't see it. With Indianapolis continuing to win and with Houston continuing to win, I just don't see it.
Yeah, like you said, Phillip Rivers, 4 touchdowns. He throws for 300 yards for the 7th time this season. Melvin Gordon does look like he is starting to get a stranglehold over that backfield finally. Still's not finding the end zone. He only gets 60 yards, but it is 4.3 yards per carry, which is a good sign for a big running back like that. Stevie Johnson and Inman find the end zone for San Diego, but Antonio Gates, 4 catches and gets the 2 big touchdowns early that really gave San Diego that stranglehold early. So Gary, fantasy leagues are starting to hit that playoff mark, but maybe even for daily leagues. Which tight end would you rather have the rest of the way, Antonio Gates or Julius Thomas?
Well, so far right now what we're looking at is Antonio Gates has got 377 yards and 4 touchdowns, but 2 of those touchdowns were from this game, like you pointed out, and 2 of them for earlier in this season. Julius Thomas, we know he missed quite a bit of the time at the beginning, but like you said, Randy, earlier, he's coming around. He's got 283 yards and 3 touchdowns, but for me, you can't go by the stats. I think Julius Thomas is still the guy you want to have a key and look at because of the fact that Bortles is going to start getting more rhythm with him as time goes on, and I think he could be a good playoff fantasy tight end for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to my other tight end here shortly, but just a quick story. In one of my big leagues, if I would have won this week, it would have put me in a position to win, and I'm in the playoffs next week. And one of my big decisions I had to make was which tight end did I want to start, Julius Thomas or Jimmy Graham. I went with Jimmy Graham because I could see this Julius Thomas thing starting to emerge, but I just didn't think it was there yet. And on that league, I also have Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson, and starting 3 Jaguars is weird to me. Obviously, I know who I'm starting next week, but
yeah, it's so funny too, Randy, because I've had Graham on one of my rosters, and I was playing him, and he didn't do much. He started to catch on, and I've been benching him though because there's other tight ends that I can find that are doing better than him. And I'm glad I had him bench this week because, he definitely would have killed me if I had him.
The other decision in that league that ended up making me lose was I decided to start the Dolphins defense against my Jets because I thought it was going to be a low-scoring, ugly game, just the way the Jets have been playing. And I benched the Colts defense because they're playing red-hot Jameis Winston. And, that cost me 17 points. So, Sean, go ahead and talk about that game.
Yeah, exactly. This game was a bit different because Tampa Bay had been coming on such a high, and Matt Hasselbeck went on. He got 2 touchdowns to T.Y. Hilton. He was throwing Dante Moncrief, man. This dude just was catching. He had, I think that one of the last drives, every first down was Dante Moncrief. Every single one. Just amazing how that was happening. It blew my mind how Tampa Bay's defense was just letting them go through on this. And, honestly, Jameis Winston, they sacked him 5 times, which is the most Tampa Bay's allowed all year. Doug Martin got most of his 97 yards on a 56-yard scamper to basically get him the one touchdown to Cameron Brate of all people. The whole that helps no one, certainly an effect for that touchdown. It just absolutely bad on this is that Bucs defense that we saw, earlier in the season that wasn't helping at all. Jameis Winston, Mike Evans, of course, doing his thing where he makes some big catches and then he drops some big catches as well that hurts the team. Adam Vinatieri, hits about, I think, 4 or 5 field goals in this game. Just, all the old guys came together with some of the new guys and played well. Ahmad Bradshaw's now on IR. And Frank Gore did not look that great in this game, honestly. And that's the thing. Like, they didn't really have that much of a running game, and Matt Hasselbeck was still doing it. And, to me, I think this shows that maybe the Colts do have a better team than we thought. And Hasselbeck just seems to be more in tune with the team than Luck was at this point. But they've reiterated he is the backup. And he said that himself. I don't think we're worried so much about, anything about him taking over for Luck or whatever. But there's also just weird penalty. Like the Tampa Bay got the freaking leaping penalty on them that gave the Colts that last touchdown. They would have only kicked the field goal that would have had it to 10 points ahead. Just crazy stuff for this team, honestly. And Winston threw an interception to basically end the game, too, just to kind of go on with his whole day that he was having. Just a bad day for poor Mr. Jameis Winston. But are the Colts, are they going to win this division now? Do you have faith that they can keep winning with Hasselbeck? Or you think they're going to run into one of these teams and eventually lose here?
That's so tough because they get the Steelers next week, which is going to be a very fun game Sunday night. The big one to me is Week 15 when they play Houston, because it's like I don't think they're going to win this division, but I don't think it's because they're going to implode. I just like how Houston has been playing lately. I think Houston is just going to continue to roll and win this division because they're playing well, not because Indianapolis falls apart.
Well, Gary, do you think Tampa Bay still has a shot at all in the NFC wildcard, or are their hopes dashed too with this loss?
I think this loss really does make him start to think, what's going to happen? Are they going to be the same team, that they've been doing, so well with? I don't know if they're completely dashed when it comes to their chances. I think they still have a shot here. I mean, I know a lot of people may disagree with that. I mean, there's, of course, lots of different circumstances you look at, but I just, it's hard for me because I look at the way that their division has kind of come out, and of course, you see the teams that they always have to face, and Carolina's the one that they will not be able to overcome. But you look at the Falcons are failing, and I think they're going to overdo whatever the Falcons had to throw at them. So I think they still have a shot. I think that they could, have an opportunity maybe to sneak
got
in.
Falcons, Saints, Rams, and Bears besides the Panthers. Yeah. I mean, that's not a. And then the Bears is Lovie Smith going against his old team, so there's going to be some extra vigor in that one.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly some games you should be winnable if you're Tampa Bay and you've been playing as well as you have.
Oh, definitely. And you look at other divisions of wild card situations, and they're right there with a lot of these other wild card teams. So I feel like they have a shot.
Well, let's talk about Randy's last solo game here, the Arizona Cardinals San Francisco 49ers, a game that Arizona certainly was not themselves in here, and the 49ers almost took advantage.
Well, they weren't themselves. The refs weren't there themselves. This was the most bizarre game to watch because we kind of talked about it in the preview. Would this be a trap game? Arizona's played two huge games going into this. Do they let up a little bit? And they did. I mean, you had brought up, who was it earlier?
The Tennessee and Oakland game about the refs?
No, about the just being flat forever. Oh, the Giants. You had talked about the Giants being just flat for three quarters. That's how I felt about Arizona this entire game. Nothing seemed to be clicking for them. It doesn't help that Chris Johnson fractures his tibia. Andre Ellington's still suffering from the turf toe. They both leave the game, both likely to miss some time. Chris Johnson might be done for the year. So that's pretty rough for him. Gary, rookie running back, David Johnson, we were all kind of high on him in the preseason. Now it's his time to shine. Can he carry the load, or should we be concerned for Arizona?
I think you have to be concerned with Arizona only for the fact that they do well with this committee of running backs. And, even when Chris Johnson was healthy, David Johnson still had an opportunity to get in there and make things happen from whenever he got that shot. And he didn't do too bad, but hasn't, been exactly, the guy that I think we were all talking about earlier this year. Will he be okay? I think he'll be fine, but he will not be the, explosive back like we expect, because I think teams are going to realize that, hey, he's their only option at this moment, really. So he'll be okay, but he won't be anything great. Don't, get your expectations too high with him.
Yeah, so I just want to, before I get into how this game breaks down and how the 49ers did, and listen, the refs have been so terrible, and it was so prevalent in this game. And a report came out on ESPN today that shows that there are 23 referees that are either in their first year or second year in the NFL, which, I mean, it could show why we're having this many issues. But if you just want some fun, go watch this Cardinals 49ers game and just play. Don't even watch the condensed version. Watch the full version and just watch. I forget his name. I should have typed it out. The head official for Fox that always comes in when they're talking about replays and stuff.
Oh, Mike Pereira?
Yeah, Mike Pereira. They kept bringing him in, and he would say one thing, and then these refs would say something else, and he would go, no. They got it wrong there. There's just so many times he just went, nope, that wasn't right. Just constantly through this game. There was a point in this game where these referees lost the ability to count. They just lost track of what down it was. They penalized the 49ers for having too many men on the field, and then another play goes down and it's fourth down, and then they come back later. No, it's second down, and it was third down this whole time, and it took them
wow,
almost 4 minutes to figure out what down it was. And then then they set it up, and it looked like they're going to go, and then the referee is off to the side on his headset talking to somebody in New York, probably getting his ass chewed about how terrible this was going, and that took even longer before they finally were able to continue on playing this game. You had a terrible roughing the passer call where Quentin Dial, the defensive lineman for the 49ers, hits Carson Palmer right in the chest, doesn't lean with his head, doesn't, because that's the main one, crown of the helmet. He hits him with his shoulder. Yes, his helmet touches him a little bit, but it was a clean hit. They call him for roughing the passer. There was a point in this game where Arizona had 9. We did the Dolphins-Jets game in London, and I remember, Sean, you were going off about on Miami how they had 7 or 8 plays in the red zone because of a couple pass interference calls. Exact same situation happened here, but just on ridiculousness. Arizona had 9 plays inside the 3-yard line, but because of 4 different penalties, that just kind of kept them down there. There were 20 combined penalties in the entire game. I bet 10 of them were real. It was so tough to watch this game. Not only were there so many penalties that it slowed it down, the refs were confused the whole time. Again, they had that 4-minute delay to figure out what down they were on. It just hurt my head to watch this, and it was the last game I watched in this whole run. Arizona's playing like crap. They score a touchdown to take the lead, and then miss the extra point. They don't get off the post. They only be up by 6. They let the 49ers get all the way down to the 30 before they finally stop them on downs and finally finish the game. It's just so weird. But San Francisco, listen, give them credit. They stayed in there with a very tough Arizona team. I liked a lot of the young talent that I saw. Sean Drone ran the ball effectively and also was decent in the passing game. Combines for 86 yards in the game. Vance McDonald, who I think is a third-year wide receiver, 6 catches for 71 and a touchdown. And their rookie receiver, Blake Bell, also with 3 catches and 67 yards. So it looks like they're using their time wisely and they're focusing on the young talent, especially on the offense, and just really trying to figure out who they have for next year. So, Sean, I ask you, is the future bright for San Francisco?
It looks like it. I mean, I don't know that Blaine Gabbert's your quarterback you want for many years or whatever, but he's playing effectively. And yeah, I mean, Vance McDonald's his second touchdown in 2 weeks. He's doing his thing. I mean, between him and Garrett Selleck, they're the ones that scored touchdowns for that team. I mean, I really liked Sean Drone just in the time that we've gotten to see him. I think everything. If Carlos Hyde can come back healthy, you have a nice 1-2 punch there. Just the defense seems to be getting better with every game. So, this could be a decent team next year.
Well, and then you look at it. I mean, again, a long time to go, and I'll ask you both just real quick. Right now, they would be the 5th pick. The 4 picks ahead of them would be Dallas, San Diego, Cleveland, and Tennessee. Maybe you think Dallas goes after a quarterback, but maybe not in the first round. It depends on how you feel about Tony Romo. But I don't think San Diego, maybe Cleveland, and Tennessee's not going after a quarterback. So say San Francisco's in a decent position to get the first quarterback off the board if they choose to. Who's that college guy that would fit perfectly with San Francisco?
Don't ask me that question. Gary, just...
There's a lot of different guys that I believe will be coming out this year. Prescott's not going to San Francisco because Jerry Jones has him on the phone already. At least I'm praying to God he does. Let's think about this. I mean, there's some different guys. I mean, Boykin's coming out. I mean, Boykin could definitely, I think, work in a San Francisco offense. I mean, he may not be the guy that they want.
Did they go through another
That's exactly.
barrage there?
That's exactly my fear for them, too, is that, he's a kid that I like. I think he could do well, but, that's the question of do they want to do that again? Man, I'm trying to think of some names. You may have to help me out, Randy.
Didn't the USC quarterback that everybody's talking about come out this year?
Cody Kessler?
Yeah.
Yeah, he would come out. He's a decent one, too. Yeah. The one that sticks out to me, and it's the one I've been waiting to come out of college for the last couple of years. He does have some injury issues that you have to kind of worry about right now. But like you guys said, do they want to go with that running quarterback? So I think the perfect fit for San Francisco, get a guy in the pocket, your traditional quarterback, a guy out of Michigan State, Connor Cook. Ooh. You put him on the offense, it could be pretty good.
Yeah, I like him. Cook will be... Yeah, you're right. I like that name. From what we've seen from him this year, too, is he's a pretty smart kid. So, yeah, I think that would be a great choice.
Would be pretty interesting to see, certainly. We go into these 2 big games that happen one after the other. I did them both on Rabble, and it was fun to go from one crazy game to another crazy game. I was out of breath by the time I got done with that Broncos and Patriots game because I basically had like 20 minutes to go get something to eat and whatever between the 2 games. But man, Seattle and Pittsburgh was everything you wanted it to be and more, honestly. Ben Roethlisberger throws for 456 yards, but the problem is he throws for 2 interceptions. And they came in the fourth quarter, and not the quarter you want him to come in. He actually got hurt with a concussion at the end, and Landry Jones had to finish the game. But at that point, it was pretty much over. Antonio Brown got pretty much stuffed by Richard Sherman. So Marcus Wheaton went off, 201 yards and a touchdown, 9 receptions. I mean, he had like almost a 70-yarder at one point. He was insane. in this game. It was insane. Like, all these long throws going to Marcus Wheaton. I mean, I don't know that there's too many great long, deep passing quarterbacks. Ben Roethlisberger's got to be up there. But, on the other side of things, everybody talks about Russell Wilson. He has to get out of the pocket to throw. We've talked about it a bunch of times. Russell Wilson, in the pocket, accurate, only misses 9 throws, 345 yards, 5 touchdowns in this game, including the just throw to Doug Baldwin that he breaks a tackle. Antoine Blake's been known to do that a couple times where he goes for the big hit, he misses the tackle. He does that here. Doug Baldwin goes all the way on a 3rd and 12, 80 yards, wins the game for Seattle. Thomas Rawls didn't do that great. He only, he got 81 yards, he got the touchdown, but it wasn't anything tremendous. Jimmy Graham was doing pretty well until he had to go out with a torn patella tendon, so he's done for the year. That means they lose their leading receiver, even though Doug Baldwin might have surpassed him after this game. But honestly, this was two teams that really wanted it. They knew where they were. They knew they needed this game for their wild cards. And Seattle at home just finally you get a great Russell Wilson performance. Finally you get this defense doing everything they had to do. It was a total team effort, I thought, from Seattle. The Steelers defense just couldn't get to Russell Wilson and do what they needed to do. And honestly, they only sacked him twice. And I didn't think that was enough, honestly. So, to me, this proves Seattle deserves to be in that wild card spot that they hold right now. Do you think with this win, which everybody was kind of considering a swing game, and with their really easy schedule they have now, Seattle going to the playoffs? Okay.
Yeah, I know Randy definitely was excited about answering this one. I see him definitely getting a wild card here. I mean, the rest of their schedule I feel like is soft enough for them to really ease in there. But Randy, I mean, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really tough test next week. They're at Minnesota, and then they get at Arizona the last week. But the 3 games in between, they should win. And listen, this is just this exact same thing we went through last year. People start writing them off. They struggle at the beginning of the year, and then they start figuring out some stuff, and they get rolling. I mean, other than that fourth quarter blow up they had against Arizona, where they gave away that game, they've won 4 of the last 5, and are looking very strong. So yeah, I do see them making the playoffs here.
Well, the Steelers, on the other hand, lose a game, and now both Kansas City and Houston overtake them in the wild card spot. And, of course, Cincinnati at 9-2 leading that division, and are probably going to lock it up, barring any kind of catastrophe happening. But the Steelers have 3 rough games coming up before they get easy games against the Ravens and Browns at the end. Well, I guess you could say they're easy with who they're playing, but Colts, Bengals, Broncos. 3 rough games. Considering, maybe some of the other teams in the AFC have easier schedules and all that kind of stuff, do you see maybe the Steelers don't make the playoffs?
That's pretty crazy to say, but yeah. I mean, because you're bringing it up, Kansas City has a pretty weak schedule. I do think Houston wins the division, so it comes down to Indianapolis, which makes, of course, this game between them on Sunday night extremely important between the Steelers and Colts. The Jets don't have that tough of a schedule either. So, I mean, if you're Pittsburgh, I mean, these next 3 games are very difficult, but you have to go 2-1, I think, if you want to make the wild card. I think 1-2 puts you in deep trouble. 2-1 puts you in a great spot.
Gary, what do you think?
I think it's going to be difficult as well. I mean, I think the way things are going for them, when it comes to Big Ben staying healthy, of course, we know Landry's has been able to help out. Vic's been able to do what they can. But, I mean, these teams, they're not going to be easy, even with these guys, stepping in. I think they need a healthy Big Ben to win these games. They need a defense that steps up. And we've seen them step up a few times, but not all the time. So I just think their chances are really slim here.
All right. Well, the final game then that happened on Sunday was another crazy game with snow falling constantly in Mile High Stadium. The Patriots, and at one point the snow just blanketed the field almost towards the end there. The Patriots went in to Mile High and they lose for the first time this season. C.J. Anderson with a 48-yard touchdown in overtime to win them the game. Brock Osweiler doing it to it with the Patriots, but the Patriots lose Gronk. Thankfully for them, it's not serious at first. It was thought it was going to be serious because he goes out on the cart and everything. But luckily, he's only going to miss, seems like, one game. The next game here against the Eagles, which, that should be a blowout anyway. They fired Chris Harper after this game because his muff punt that gave the Broncos life they really could have won the game if he didn't muff that punt. So I think, Bill Belichick, every right in the world to go fire him. He's young. He wasn't really anything, let's be honest, and they're not going to lose sleep over that at all. The Broncos defense was terrific. I mean, both the defenses were really good in this game too. They came at both the quarterbacks. Both of them sacked 3 times. Brady was having some troubles having to complete these long passes, and he luckily for him he doesn't throw interceptions, but just one of these. I mean, he had no running game. He's throwing to Gronk and he's having to throw to Brandon Bolden after that because Scott Chandler, I don't know how many times he dropped passes, and you could see like Tom Brady staring a hole in him. Tom Brady said he'd never been more pissed off after a game than he was in this game. And then there were some officiating calls that were just ridiculous, honestly. I mean, we can say what we want about the Patriots, but they got some rough calls go against them. Osweiler, though, this guy was making some throws. He made a terrific throw to Emmanuel Sanders that got him down to like a 5-yard line there to get the score. Just, I mean, he was doing. He was playing very well. I mean, I think after this game, Peyton Manning might sit for a while. And I know they're still saying he's the backup and all that stuff, but man, that's a rough call for Gary Kubiak. Like, Osweiler is playing well. I mean, he didn't have, just this wonderful, awesome game or nothing. He didn't even complete half his throws. He did throw an interception, but he did enough to get them to win the game. And again, you have to give them the running game has been averaging 1.5 yards more with Osweiler than they have with Peyton Manning. C.J. Anderson, 113 yards. Ronnie Hillman, 59 yards. They combined for 3 of the 4 touchdowns. I mean, you can't ask any more from your running backs than that. And this was just one of the great games you're going to see all year. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, it's definitely weird to say that one of the best games we've seen all year had 18 punts in it. But it really was. It was very fun to watch from start to finish. Obviously, the snow creates a terrific atmosphere. Both teams were trying to sling it around. Just the defenses were just stellar. The thing that I kind of question, and I don't want to be the guy that questioned Bill Belichick, I don't know why they didn't attempt to run it more. It didn't seem to me like LeGarrette Blount was getting completely stuffed. He wasn't like amazing, but at least to change it up a little bit, you only give him the ball 9 times the whole game.
You don't give James White the ball hardly any either.
So, I mean, maybe they're in the third quarter where it just seemed like both teams just would go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, just to try something a little different. It just seemed like they forgot they had a running game or just had given up on it so fast. So I think that's one thing I would have changed if I'm New England. But yeah, this is just a great back and forth game that ends up going to overtime after Tom Brady does what Tom Brady does and gets them in the field goal range.
That was amazing too, with the play clock running out. They don't even realize the clock have been running that whole time, and they still get it to, I think it was LaFell with 4 seconds left on the clock. It's just like, wow, only freaking Tom Brady.
Well, and that's right after Brock Osweiler just goes out there and throws a few bullets to go down there and give him the lead in the first place. I mean, some of his throws that he made on that last drive in the fourth quarter made Peyton Manning go, "Oh yeah, I remember doing that 5 years ago."
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of Brock Osweiler, a trivia question for you. He became the first quarterback making his first or second career start to beat Tom Brady since who?
Jeez.
Oh my goodness.
For some reason, like, the name is going to kill me because I can think of it. I just can't.
I'm only asking you because it's my team. There's your hint.
Chad Pennington?
Oh, that's a good guess. I don't know.
It's
when
Tom Brady.
Fitzpatrick when he...
No, it's Mark Sanchez.
Sanchez.
Oh, freaking
wow.
Mark Sanchez. Yeah. I don't know why I can't think of Mark Sanchez.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Jets fan. I try not to think of Mark Sanchez. But Gary, what did you think of this game?
You know, it was a back and forth like you guys were saying, and the one thing I take out of this is Osweiler did a great job under pressure. I mean, this is a big game for his team, and they knew it, and, you know, it's a daunting task to beat the New England Patriots, and I'm sure they're very intimidating, especially to a young quarterback like him. So I think he did an excellent job. Kind of see him, some of the things he did, you know, after rewatching some of these plays. It was great to see the poise that he had, and of course, you know, he did audible a few times in the game, and those audibles mattered a lot, and that shows that he's got some smarts about him. It shows that, hey, you know, he pays attention, and he's a guy that's in the film room. I really appreciated that about him, and so that was exciting if you're a Denver Broncos fan to see that, especially since that's probably going to be your future at quarterback. But yeah, I mean, you can't say anything more than great job, C.J. Anderson, making that last run. I mean, that was a big deal, and that's an overtime run. Great stuff. Oh, and one last thing, Sean, you said that you know, they won't lose any sleep. You know, Belichick definitely won't lose any sleep over cutting that player. I just think it'd be beautiful. The Christmas season is upon us, and if he had 3 ghosts appear to him one Christmas night about cutting that one player and his son going without Christmas, you know, things like that. I think it'd be beautiful. So,
who would play the 3 ghosts?
That's a good question. Okay, so you got to have the past, present, and future. So I think the past would have to be someone like, I don't know, Bill Parcells. Why Bill Parcells be the old guy, you know? And then present, I would have to say, let's think about this. So a present guy would be Danny Amendola. Right, he would talk to him. You know, since he has time, since he's on the sidelines, he has time to talk to Tom Brady. In the future, that's the biggest question. Who, Sean? Who could it be in that Patriots organization? The future.
I figured you would have went right to Zach Prescott.
Oh, he's not going to. I was sticking with the Patriots organization. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess you should say Zach Prescott. There you go. Let's go with that.
Yeah. Just that was fun.
I'm just saying, guys. I mean, this is the one guy who's kind of like Scrooge. He snarls at everybody. Press conferences, he's like, whatever, I don't care about this. But I'd love it. You know, you said he wouldn't lose any sleep. I'd love to see him lose sleep with that.
That would be fun. Does that make a movie out of that? Bill Belichick being the... Because Bill Belichick is totally, you know, Uncle Scrooge. So, I mean, that press conference was hilarious to watch.
Somebody needs to come up with a script real quick. We have a new ABC special next year.
Yes, let's send it in. We can make some money out of this, guys.
So have you guys seen this this Fantex thing where they basically make money off of future earnings off of athletes, and 10 athletes, including Dallas Cowboy Terrence Williams, are put in here, and they're going to be on the stock exchange as their own symbol that you can invest in. It includes Vernon Davis, Alshon Jeffrey, Mohamed Sanu, Ryan Shazier, Kendall Wright from the Titans, Terrence Williams, E.J. Manuel, Michael Brockers from the St. Louis Rams defense.
E.J. Manuel has to be worth a penny.
Yeah, Jack Muhart, and the Los Angeles Angels pitcher Andrew Haney. Yeah, so basically, like, even if they retire, you could get part of their broadcast contracts or anything like that, appearance fees that they get. Basically, like, Vernon Davis sold 10% of his future earnings for $4.2 million, and he's returned $1.50 a share right now. Like, just apparently Alshon Jeffrey sold his for 13% or whatever. Just, this is crazy that this is allowed to happen, honestly.
Wow. This is crazy. I'm not buying Terrence Williams stock for sure.
I know that. I know that's right. I'm not buying Terrence Williams stock either. But speaking of stock, we do have to buy stock in college football teams because somebody's got to make the playoffs. And man, some teams certainly are going to make their bid known when they go for those conference championships. Randy, who do you think it's going to be right now?
Yeah, I going into this last week, I really, really was hoping for just anarchy. I didn't really get it. I mean, the closest thing to anarchy was Stanford, beating Notre Dame in their close game, and Ohio State not only beating Michigan, but just putting a drubbing on them. It wasn't even close the entire way, trying to make a case, even though they won't be in the conference championship game, to somehow make the playoffs, but Michigan State and Alabama and Oklahoma all take care of business. So to me, right now, we'll find out, obviously, later tonight what the committee decides. But my playoff rankings right now is Clemson at 1, Oklahoma at 2, Alabama at 3, and then Michigan State at 4, with Iowa and Ohio State as your last two out. And the way I look at it is, with these conference championships coming out or up next week, the winner of Michigan State and Iowa is going to be one of the playoff spots for sure. And then to me, it's the only question is, if Clemson loses to North Carolina, who gets that last spot? Is it North Carolina? Is it Ohio State? I don't think
North Carolina won't get it.
They should.
No, I think it's the same thing as if Florida beats Alabama. Florida's not going to get that spot. They'll give it to somebody else.
No. Florida's a whole different thing. They lost 2 games. But listen, North Carolina is legit. They lost 1 game. It was the opener. They've won their last 11. If they go out and beat the number 1 team, and they only have 1 loss,
I think they still give it to Ohio State because of the bigger name.
And see, that's where listen, I understand where it's coming from, and I understand why you say that, Sean. But if North Carolina wins the ACC, they lose their opener to South Carolina and then run the table, and you don't let them in, but you let an Ohio State team in who didn't even win their division in their conference, then your playoff system is still broken.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
I agree completely.
But that's the problem. It's in the end, obviously, this is still all about money. And it's all about the big names. And I'll probably agree, if North Carolina beats Clemson, Ohio State will probably take that last spot. I'm with you. But they shouldn't. But, a big tell will be where everyone stands tonight and where they put them. I would love to see them say North Carolina is one of the next 2 out and make me feel a little bit better for them. But I just don't see it. But yeah, let's get to those. We'll preview them on Friday. But your 5 big conference championship games starts with the American Conference with Temple and Houston. Houston's actually a legit team, and look for them in a very high-class bowl. Obviously, no chance to get into a playoff or anything like that. But they are very good, sitting at 11-1. Then you have the SEC championship, where I think Alabama is just going to beat Florida by 50. Florida looked completely terrible against Florida State. Alabama is still Alabama. Pac-12, you had the USC versus Stanford, which is going to be a great game. Big Ten is Michigan State and Iowa. Again, winner is in the playoffs. I think there's no doubt there. ACC is the big one as far as maybe any kind of shakeup with North Carolina and Clemson. So it starts out kind of weak, but by those night games, it's all in for college football. That's for sure. And speaking of college football, real quick, congratulations to Paul for winning our group. I got back up to second, but just could never catch him. He just seemed to continuously either get as many points as me or beat me by a couple. So I think he beat the group by 20. And then Gary, you actually finished third, and Sean, you finished sixth.
Damn that 1 week that I missed on accident.
Yeah, and me not trusting my gut killed me a lot of the times. But I'm glad at least I got into the top three. I feel good about that. But it's been a blast. I really enjoyed that. So.
Well, just wait. Starting next week, you got to start filling out bowl predictions.
Oof, that's gonna
that's gonna be fun too.
Yeah, definitely.
I get to get Gary's breakdown on the Idaho famous potato bowl.
Oh man, yeah, can't wait for that one.
Are you ready for that, Gary?
Oh, you know it. I got my potato peeler out. Let's go.
Ugh. Yeah. So let's see. Oh man, only got 8 out of the. Let me check. We'll see what's going on with the other. So in our NFL, good God, me and Gary, way down there in 8th. Just we're in a 3-way tie with Harry, and then Randy's in 5th right now by like almost 10. So
yeah, I'm up there. We got a 6-way battle where there's 6 of us.
Yeah, Paul's in first for that one too with Jace.
Yeah. So next year, Paul's going to take all of our spots.
Yeah, exactly. Only thing to get Paul on to do this podcast.
He just needs to go ahead and just do all the predictions, and we'll just follow his lead.
Right?
Oh, man. So.
But yeah, so there's our standings for that. So, now we got to get on to Gary's fantasy picks for week 13, the waiver wire pickups.
All right, guys. Well, we mentioned earlier that Gronkowski's injury was not so bad. We expected it to be Sunday night, so we were all scrambling, who's going to be the next tight end out there? Well, we all know Scott Chandler is the next man up for that team. But, with an injury to Gronk only being 1 to 2 weeks, it doesn't help you much. But I will say this. If you're in need of a tight end, your tight end blows. That's the 1 weak spot on your team, and you really need a guy. I would go get Scott Chandler anyway. I don't even care if it's 1 week. We all know Tom Brady loves the tight end. We know they get touchdowns. Of course, Scott Chandler just scored a touchdown in this past game with Gronk. So I would go pick him up. At least he can boost your team. It's kind of unfair to tell people just, for a 1 week guy, so I'll sneak in another guy. Cecil Shorts, we mentioned him earlier, he is making things happen. He's not great, but he is definitely scoring touchdowns in Houston. So he's a great wide receiver. If you want to go pick up somebody for a flex, Cecil Shorts should be a guy you're looking at. My number 2, though, is David Johnson. I told you guys earlier, I don't think he's going to be game busters. I don't think he's going to come in and do everything Chris Johnson could do, but he will definitely be the number 1 guy there in Arizona going forward. So he's always worth a look, and I would go ahead and use him maybe at wide running back 2 or 3. He could do some good things. Then number 3 for me has to be Spencer Ware. Now, how long is he going to be playing for Kansas City? That is left to be known, especially with West and his future availability. But I will say this: we saw him play pretty well. He was a good power back at times, especially in the red zone. So he would be a good flex option for some people. Let's just get him on your roster if you have room. Maybe allow him to kind of show you what he can do, and then you can go forward with that. And of course, number 4 for me has to be another guy that I think we've seen do well. But, not everybody has this guy on their fantasy teams because really they don't trust him. But Marcus Wheaton, you've got to look at him and you've got to think, hey, when the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing these difficult teams, they're going to need him and he's going to be there and be an option. So I would definitely take a flyer on him as well. He's been, of course, always there in the mix with the receivers for Pittsburgh. You want to look at him. And my 5th guy is definitely a sleeper, but I like him a lot. I've been watching him. Brian Hartline. He's a possession receiver. We've seen him do a few good things tonight on Monday Night Football. I think he's a guy that you could definitely pick up and look at and say, hey, I'm in a deep league, maybe in your 16, maybe even a 12-team league, and you don't have many options out there. Go pick him up. He'll definitely be a decent wide receiver 3 for you when you don't have anybody else. There you go, guys.
All right, let's move on to our power rankings for this week, and a little bit of a change up here. What'd you have, Gary?
You know what? With New England losing, we all knew that, they were going to fall down somewhere in the rankings. I have Carolina as my new number 1. That is right. They've taken over. Not only are they just undefeated, but they seem like the hottest team in the league right now. I mean, it seems like they're just playing Madden right now. So you've got to get them at that number 1 spot. New England, to me, just falls to 2. I know a lot of people would say, well, wouldn't you put them down further past some of these other teams? No, because I think any given Sunday, teams can win, but for the most part, 95% of the time, New England's going to win. So I still got them in my number 2 until they prove me wrong. 3 for me is Arizona. I mean, I just look at this team, injuries or no injuries. This team just keeps trucking along. They look good. Palmer's looking better than ever. So I'm going to go with them at number 3. Cincinnati is at my number 4. I really like what they're doing. They're trying to come back. They did a great job this week. Let's see if they can do more. But right now, I think they're still a good balanced team. And my number 5 is Minnesota. Green Bay has struggled. They're still struggling, it looks like. But Minnesota looks like they're going more forward ahead. And I really like what Minnesota's doing. So they got my number 5.
All right, Randy.
Yeah, Garrett, it's nice for you to join the Carolina bandwagon. I have Carolina staying as my 1. I too had New England drop 1 spot, but they were at 2 for me to begin with, so they dropped to 3 behind Cincinnati. I liked how they bounced back after their 2 losses and really just took care of business over a weak St. Louis team. I still think New England's one of the best in the league. It's just the injuries are really starting to stack up, and yes, the Gronk injury is not as bad as it first seemed, but to lose him even for 1 week on top of everything else, it might start to be too much for Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And then for me, my 4 or 5 are the 2 hottest teams right now, the 2 teams that have won 5 in a row, and that's the Arizona Cardinals and the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, for me, where am I not done here already? I got Carolina Panthers at 1. They destroyed the Cowboys. They continue to look awesome. I really can't move them anywhere because they deserve that spot until they lose, at least. Patriots lose, but it was in a really tight game that they had multiple chances to win. So I give them the benefit of the doubt and say they're number 2. Cincinnati Bengals, they continue to roll. They smashed the Rams doing their thing. I got to give them 3rd. The Arizona Cardinals, even though they were in a rough game with San Francisco, it's a divisional game, so sometimes those things happen. But they got the win that they needed, and they keep rolling. And the Denver Broncos, Brock Osweiler, they're now 9-2. He gets a huge win against the Patriots, and a huge win for himself because that could name him the starter for a few more weeks here. And I definitely think they deserve to be back up there at 5. That defense still dominating. So let's go to our player of the week. We got, again, in case this is your first week listening, we have had 11 other winners, of course, since this is week 12. We had Carlos Hyde in week 1, Tom Brady week 2, A.J. Green week 3, Devontae Freeman week 4, Eli Manning week 5, week 6 was DeAndre Hopkins, week 7 Kirk Cousins, week 8 Drew Brees, week 9 Antonio Brown, week 10 Carson Palmer, and week 11 was Cam Newton last week. So, who you got, Randy?
Give me the man that gave the Patriots that first loss. Give me C.J. Anderson, 113 yards with those 2 huge touchdown runs, one in overtime to win the game, where he made every 3-8 fantasy owner jump up for joy because he finally did something for them.
All right, Gary, who you got?
I got Russell Wilson, 5 touchdowns, and just once again, showcasing that when he has time to look around for a receiver, he's going to find one, and he made things happen. You got to give credit to the receivers with those catches after runs, but I just think that he definitely deserves that pick for this week.
All right. Well, for me, I've got Doug Baldwin. He got 3 touchdowns, over 160-something yards. He got the touchdown that won him the game, breaking tackles. I mean, he really stepped it up in a game where, after what Tyler Lockett did last week, everybody was saying, oh, Tyler Lockett this. And Doug Baldwin showed, hey, I'm still the number one receiver here. And he was it. So.
Well, once again, we got to break the tie, and we can let Sean. I'll let you, throw your sense in. But for me, I may be actually having to switch mine to go with Randy here. That's a big deal to be the guy to win the to score the winning touchdown against New England, who's undefeated. But what were your thoughts on it?
I mean, this was Russell Wilson's best game of the year, by far. Complete performance from him, 5 touchdowns. That's nothing to sneeze at, guys. We had 2 guys last week we gave a win because of 5 touchdowns. We're going to break that this week because CJ scored a winning touchdown. I mean, it was because of a broken tackle.
What do you think, Randy? I mean, are you sticking with your pick, or do you got any say of these other 2 picks?
No, I'm loose on my pick. We can go with Russell Wilson. I mean, he definitely goes out and put up quite a performance against a very tough team, and all 5 of those touchdowns were needed. So I'm for Russell Wilson, too.
All right, well, Russell Wilson it is, I guess. So we give it to the Seahawks quarterback, Russell Wilson, and he is our player of the week for Week 12. And we'll have to see what's in store for Week 13 when we preview that on Friday morning for you live here on Spreaker.com. And then, of course, it will be available on demand where this podcast is: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, VOC Nation, Radio Network. It's on YouTube, WTM Network. It's everywhere you can find a podcast. It is there, guys. Just subscribe to your favorite one. You can write a review on iTunes or Stitcher, whatever you'd like to say, whether it's positive or negative. We appreciate it, We were trying to improve the audio quality this week using the Spreaker desktop app. Hopefully it works out better. I'll have to check it out as soon as we get done here, and hopefully it does sound better at least. And, well, we do have other podcasts that we did. We had to wait all the way till Saturday night to finally get to have this week's, or, well, I guess last week's Wrestling to the Max done. We had to do without Paul because I got out at like 2:30 in the morning from work, no joke, and I got home 30 minutes later. We were doing that podcast. We probably should have done it Friday night, but just, man, it was going to be rough having to get up and do all that. So we got it done. We talked about why Raw ratings don't matter, and we gave our things we're thankful for wrestling in 2015. And Co-op Multi should be back tomorrow night or tonight or Wednesday morning, whenever it is you listen on demand. We had to take a week off last week because just the stuff with Thanksgiving week was terrible. But Randy, you have your podcast. Tell everybody about what you did this week.
Yeah, a lot with your Co-op Multi. I have a podcast about video gaming as well. It's me and my buddy Wes. We play through a couple video games every 2 weeks. That just kind of has slipped by, added to our backlog, and that's what we do. It's Backlog Busting Project at backlogbusting.com. Our last episode was last week, where we talked about the remake of Twisted Metal. I talked about Shadow of Mordor, which came out last year, and Wes talked about the first Suikoden game for the PlayStation 1.
All right, some big games to talk about there, and, well, we're going to have some big games to talk about on Friday as well. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for checking us out on Rabble. I think we had a combined about 600 listens between the 2 games. So thank you for that. And we'll be back on Rabble on Thursday doing the post game for that Lions and Green Bay Packers game. And that could be interesting. As the Lions have been kind of flying high lately, and the Packers, they've been kind of on the low. So, all right. Well, until Friday, we'll see you later, everybody.